All right, all right. So until the presentation starts, hello everyone. So cheer up a bit. This is the final presentation. So hopefully it will be interesting. So yeah, um, this one. Yeah, works great. So I'll start with a question. Who have heard about DigitalOcean as a cloud provider? Is there any? All right. So we have a few hands. Do you think DigitalOcean is a hyperscaler? Yes, no, maybe. Maybe. All right. Maybe. That's one of my objectives, to tell you what is a hyperscaler and also to set the stage for the migration. Because migrating to the cloud might be a good option, but might not be such a good option. So it's not for every use case. So timing the migration is super important. Then after you decide if it's good for you, you should evaluate your hyperscaler. My advice is if you truly decide to migrate is to choose a hyperscaler because there are a lot of advantages. Then doing the migration itself, it's a bit of has its own complexity. So everyone should look at things like budgeting. Should look, I think, as like have a proper plan for doing the migration, and then executing on it. So my name is Andrei Manea, and I'm the CEO of CloudHero. If you would scan that QR code, you can find my profile on LinkedIn, so you can follow me. And I'm here because I run CloudHero. CloudHero it's a DevOps professional services and consultancy business. So basically, we help companies mostly migrate to the cloud. That's most of our business. And I have a bit of track record of doing this by helping all those companies from like very agile startups to large enterprises um, to improve their operations when it comes to infrastructure and to migrate to the cloud. But first of all, when we are saying cloud, we usually think about hyperscalers. So what is a hyperscaler? A hyperscaler it's a cloud provider that has infrastructure and operations at an immense scale. And more important than this is they have ready-to-use managed services. Because as I told you, and that was the difference between DigitalOcean and a cloud provider, a hyperscaler provides managed services, and I'll talk a bit later about the importance of managed services and how you can leverage them. So a hyperscaler usually has infrastructure as a service, which is like the norm when it comes to cloud. It has platform as a service, which is a layer of abstraction. You can put your code on top of that. It has software as a service, so you can use services like email as a service, document management as a service, whatever. And it has special offerings like generative AI. You can build your own, I don't know, chatbots or whatever you'd like, LLMs on top of using them as a service. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, you don't have to train them, you just use the API and build a product on top of that. It has like data and analytics and IoT platform. So this is a hyperscaler. And there are three well-known hyperscalers available. It's like AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. What is not a hyperscaler? DigitalOcean is not a hyperscaler. So we're going very often in conversations. We are on DigitalOcean and we are in the cloud. No, you're not in the cloud. I mean, you are in the cloud, but you can have your own private cloud. You can have, if you run a bunch of virtual servers on a data center, you can call them cloud. So a truly hyperscaler, it's a infinite, quote unquote, infinite resource provider with a lot of extra services that can help you move very fast. Why DigitalOcean is not a hyperscaler and what hyperscaler um, needs to have? It needs to have like a complete ecosystem, so comprehensive services on top of compute and storage. It needs to have high redundancy and availability, so you need to have a lot of regions. Because if you are in the digital product market, let's say gaming, you launch a game here in Europe, and then you see that there's a good market in Asia, and you want to be sure you can launch there. And latency makes the difference when it comes to when it comes to digital products. You need to have enterprise-grade security and compliance. So you need to, if you are a large company and you are managing like sensitive data in the medical sector, in the finance sector, you need to make sure you have PCI compliance. You have everything it takes when it comes to security and compliance. So why companies decide to migrate? I think I'm moving very fast. I have 34 minutes. So why companies decide to migrate? Well, there's a marketing pitch that all the cloud providers have them, which might make sense, but I think those are like some standard outcomes which don't matter so much. Standard outcomes like cost savings. So every cloud provider tells you that cost savings, if you're going to start a migration, then you're going to have a lot of cost savings on infrastructure. Then you have staff productivity, so like developer productivity. You can release software faster. You can have, you can increase your like IT operations efficiency, and you have operational resilience. You have like high availability. You have security. But Katalin was here a bit earlier, and they run their own data center, and I believe so they have those in their own data center. So most of the cloud providers tell you that like when you migrate, you're gonna have your payback in 10 months. You're gonna have like improved IT business, 2x increase in productivity. I don't know, 5x increase in time to market, whatever. So there are a lot of marketing numbers, but maybe they're right. Maybe they're a good option, maybe they're not a good option for you. Those are desired outcomes. Like last year, well-known company from the digital space said that they are leaving the cloud. It's called reverse migration. And after a couple of months, they said that their cloud exit yield like 1 million per year in savings. So they contradict the value proposition of all the cloud providers saying that going to cloud is cheaper. Well, I think not those numbers are the most important. Of course, you need to have some desired outcomes, but the most important thing is to time the migration right, is to see for your company when is the right time. And timing the migration right means looking at what needs you have right there, right now. So when you are building, let's say, digital products, when you are building digital products, is definitely a time to look at the cloud, because you have like 250 plus services. All the major cloud providers provide you like image recognition as a service, generative AI as a service, database as a service, everything as a service, and this increases your agility, and you have a lot of availability zones. So you can launch your product or prototype or whatever you'd like almost everywhere in the world. Easy. So Jobful, it's a startup that we've helped. We helped migrate to AWS because they were running their digital products. So they needed access to fast and so they needed access to services that will help them build their product faster. And also Vodafone, which is at the different end of the spectrum. It's a large enterprise, and they have a lot of data centers, but they choose to migrate to the cloud when they launch some digital products. Why? Because they wanted agility. Then when you have traffic bursts, like when everything is predictable, when you are running, let's say, SAP workloads or enterprise application, then you can predict your hardware needs. So you can have like a few servers that are running on your data center and everything is predictable. But when you are in the e-commerce industry, where like you have traffic spikes, so you have Black Friday, then you need on-demand and almost unlimited capacity. And this is something that you cannot find on-premise. And like companies like Otter, which is a large shoe retailer, which they decided to migrate to the cloud because they had traffic bursts, not because it was cheaper, but because they had this business reason. And for them, it was an increase in the baseline cost of the infrastructure, but definitely it yelled on the opportunity cost because they could cope with the huge amounts of traffic, unpredictable traffic they had during campaigns. And also Freshful, which is a company that launched fresh food delivery, and it's owned by a MAG, and we help them migrate to the cloud. Why is that? Not because they don't have data centers, and the MAG is well known for running their own data centers. It's because they wanted to move very fast. They managed to launch this product in a couple of months, so they didn't need to focus on infrastructure. When time to market matters, because you want to build features instead of infrastructure components, and here it's like the managed services makes quite a difference. You need to have like NoSQL databases, you need to have relational databases, you need to have them scaled, you need to have them, I don't know, whatever you'd like. It's easy as giving some clicks. You know how difficult it is to create a highly scalable Kafka cluster? It takes quite of time. You know, you can have a Kafka cluster in any cloud provider, just using one pull request or doing one click on the interface. So this definitely saves time, and saves time for like small companies that are growing fast. Mr. Yam, it's one of our customers. It's an Australian company that grew from 0 to, I don't know, 200 people in less than 2 years. They're having a table ordering app, and they're crushing it in Australia, UK, and the west coast of the US. Just table ordering app. They're processing, I don't know, huge amounts of orders. And even a company like Apanova, which is the water supplier here in Bucharest, that they wanted to create some digital products, and for them time to market was super important. So they're a very traditional company with traditional data centers, and decided to use the cloud for to move faster. And also, when your data center is too old, sometimes it doesn't make sense for you to do like a investment in hardware, which is an upfront investment. It's pure capex. As it gets older, you need to change servers, you need to change licenses, whatever. Maybe maybe an OpEx model makes sense for you. Actually, you don't have any customers that had their data centers being too old, and that's why they decided to migrate. But this is quite an interesting use case. All right, so how can you evaluate your hyperscaler? So going a bit back to this, I think those are more important approaches towards doing a migration, like looking at the timing of what time it's your company, what stage it's your company in, not so much at those outcomes. I want to increase agility. Okay, what does it mean I want to increase agility? How does it matter for Apanova if they want to increase agility? They didn't care so much about IT agility until they had a need. So timing, I think, is very important. Cool. So how you can evaluate your hyperscaler? Who to pick? Because there are those three options, and some of them decide to pick all of them. Some of them decide to pick AWS. Some of them decide to pick Azure. You need to cover both the technical and the financial angles. If you look at all the offering pages, they're about the same. If you look at the on-demand price, how much it costs to get a server or a service per hour, it's about the same price. You also need to consider future-proof proofing and sustainability, because the cost of providing such a service, it's tightly coupled to the cost of energy. And if they don't invest in sustainable energy, then it might become very difficult for them to offer a competitive price as time passes. So if you build your solution around that, you're going to be kind of tied to it. So you have to look at this. So both are like super vital for long-term planning. So what do you need to look? First of all, I think you need to look at, or we are looking at, regions and availability, because you want to see exactly if that company has like presence where your customers are. You want to be as close to your customers. or depending on the industry, you need to look at data governance or whatever. Then you have to look at managed services. Do I need managed services? Is just, do I have only infrastructure that I want to migrate, or do I need managed services in order to make it faster when it comes to launching products or delivering services to my customers? And then you have to look at multi-cloud or hybrid infrastructure. Like small startups might not have on-premise infrastructure, they don't care so much about multi-cloud, but like large enterprises, they will have on-premise and they will stay with on-premise infrastructure for a long time because they need to do amortization on their investments or whatever. They have sensitive data, or as I heard today, I had a discussion with somebody, they're running Spark. So like in telco, usually there are still Spark servers which run a lot of applications. Good luck migrating Spark to the cloud. And also, what are the financial incentives to migrate? Because cloud providers usually provides a lot of discounts and financial incentives to choose them. So definitely it's something that you should look at. Then it's also the partner support, because you might have the resources or you might not have the resources. EMAG reached out to us to help them on Freshful, not because they didn't have a lot of DevOps engineers. It's because we were one of the best in providing services to on a certain cloud provider, and they wanted to move fast. Also, stability and track record is super important. So when you evaluate your cloud provider, look at the uptime, look at how they decommission services, look at, there are companies that throw away services if they don't have a lot of users. And if you start building your product using a managed services that might be decommissioned at a certain point in time, it's something that you should be aware at least of. Also, investments and advancement in hardware. So like a lot of companies start migrating to ARM technologies. You need to start building their own like GPUs or AI CPUs or whatever that reduce the cost per unit, so you can the cost per compute unit. And you need to look at who has the most investments and advancements in hardware. And also at environment and sustainability. For some large companies, environment really is important, and looking at cloud providers, hyperscalers that care about sustainability and environment, it's super important. So let's take one by one. Basically, when it comes to data center locations, you need to make sure you have a presence there. Also, redundancy and failover. Do you have multiple availability zones? Do you have multiple data centers in my own region? Because if every time one of the data centers fails or services fail, even though if it's a hyperscaler, they fail. They have 99.39 uptime, but they still fail. And when they fail, you need to make sure when you are doing failover, it's somewhere still close to your customer or have the proper infrastructure to do it. When it comes to managed services, and this is one of the most important, it's about their services portfolio. Does their services portfolio match your needs? Google is offering their own implementation of queue system called PubSub. AWS is offering also managed Kafka. So if it's easier for your application to integrate with Kafka, then AWS is the way to go. If it's easier for you, or I don't know, if it makes sense for you to use some data services from Google, then you might update your application and use PubSub. So those are some decisions that you need to take in consideration. Also, the flexibility and customization is super important, because some cloud providers offer like PubSub. It's a queue service, which is built by Google. You don't have access to it. You cannot tune it. You cannot modify it as you can modify the RabbitMQ or what Kafka or whatever else managed or whatever else queuing system. So you have to look also at the possibility of customizing it. And what comes to mind, it's MySQL. Most of the companies use MySQL as a database. So you need to make sure you have a MySQL compatible offering or even manage MySQL. Then automation and orchestration. Do they have the tools to automate? Okay, everyone has like API providers, everyone has their own tools to do that. But also it's super important to look at this. And then the multi-cloud or hybrid infrastructure. Do they offer cross-cloud compatibility? And if you are a large organization, you might need to have cross-cloud compatibility. Do you have on-premise integration? It's super important. Banking, transportation, utility industry, sometimes medical. You need to make sure you can have like some servers that are connected to your data. I had a discussion earlier with somebody from the security industry, and they said they were running their own data centers to store data, and they were using a hyperscaler to do the processing. You need to make sure you have those type of integrations. And also data mobility, because getting data into the cloud, it's cheap. Getting data out of the cloud, it's super expensive. And if you are speaking about 10 gigabytes of data, it's under the free tier. If you are speaking about 10 petabytes of data per day, then it might cost you a lot. So you need to make sure you are aware of what are the costs of data mobility. And then the financial incentives, those are super, super important, because when you decide, when you choose a hyperscaler, they have migration discounts. So they are providing you discounts on the invoice for 1, 2, 3 years, depending on the deal and depending on the migration. So you have to look at those numbers. It's like buying hardware. When you buy off-the-shelf hardware, it costs an X amount. If you go to a distributor or if you discuss with the vendor because you want to build a data center, you might have up to 80% discount on the hardware. That's the same with the cloud. If you are seeing a server costing you $10 per month, if you are migrating on a large scale, you might have a 80% discount on that. So it depends. Then is the free credits. Most of the cloud providers should provide you with free credits to test drive their services, to do POCs, to evaluate if it fits for you. So always ask, don't put your credit card, first ask if they provide you free credits. And then are the professional services, because there are a lot of companies that want to migrate, have the budget, but don't have the skills. And there's a shortage of cloud skills. And cloud providers, most of them do provide by themselves or through partners, professional services to help you coach, provide consultancy and actual services to migrate. And this is like an example. I have a bias on AWS because I have like a very good knowledge of AWS. But that's an example of funding programs that you can, and all of them have about the same with different terminology. So if you are like a small company or a startup, are until here, you have a lot of options to choose, and you can get, I don't know, up to $100,000, $131,000 in credits and professional services to help you migrate to the cloud. And also, if you are a company, if you are a large company, they have a program called Migration Acceleration Program that you can do after doing some POCs. So if you want to find out more, feel free to reach out on this. And also the partner support. Partner support is super important because, as I told you, they can provide you consultancy and provide you with knowledgeable staff to help you accelerate the migration. Integration support is super important because it's not like professional services partners, but also technology partners. You can have like, I don't know, SAP, it's a technology partner, or DocuSign, or whatever. You can have a lot of technology partners that can come and integrate with those cloud providers and provide their services on top of that. And also certificate professionals. Do the cloud provider has programs that can provide you like on-site or remote certifications program? This is super important. The stability and track record, it's mandatory. All of them are very stable, so I didn't heard about the hyperscaler that fails lamentably. But also, you need to look at service reliability. You need to look at incident response, how they respond to incident. Do they provide a root cause, or they say just we restore the service and nobody knows what happened? Because it's super important for you to know what happened. And also longevity. There are cloud providers and technology companies in general that stop supporting a technology if they don't have a big user base. And I understand their decisions, but it's difficult to build an enterprise strategy around a cloud provider like that. And that's why that cloud provider, that hyperscaler, it's growing, but it's struggling a bit. It's one of the cases. I won't name it, but it's one of the cloud providers that it's doing that. All right, so the investments in and advancements in hardware. So hardware innovation, as I told you, super important. Do they have ARM instances? Do they have like specialized AI instances? How do they do their network? Do they do it? Do they have their own like networking stack, whatever that can provide you with the flexibility needed to build an entire private data center on top of their own offerings? What are the performance metrics? How do you, because there are cloud providers saying that you can go like 30% faster using their own CPUs, which are ARM-based, but does it make sense for me? Is my application compatible with ARM? So you have to look at that. And also future-proofing. Is their stack compatible to where I want to be in the future? Also, environment and sustainability. I'm going to move a bit faster on this, but having renewable energy sources and a lower carbon footprint, or at least showing what's their footprint, it's super important for some industries. Cool. So after you have basically all those data, you'll take, let's say, the hybrid cloud, and you're going to create a simple Excel sheet with what are the features that are important for you and those three offerings. Every cloud provider, AWS has outposts, which they're providing you some physical servers, you put them in your data center. Google has Anthos, Azure has the Azure Stack. Everyone has pros and cons. Some are cheaper, some are more expensive, some come with license, some come without licenses. Some work with commodity hardware, some work with their own hardware. So you have to look at them and create basically a short list and look. What was the multi-cloud support? Google Anthos is the best on multi-cloud support. On core technology, I don't know. AWS outposts are super interesting, but Google Anthos provides it's a Kubernetes base. So if you are running Kubernetes, then it makes sense for you. So basically, this is a process that you use in order to decide based on the features that you are looking for, what is the best offering out of that. And you do a couple of Excels like this, and then you're gonna have like a good understanding. Good, so after you have decided what is your favorite cloud provider, then you have to look at budgeting and planning a migration. And a teaser, it's pretty difficult. It's like, I haven't built a house, but I heard that building a house, it's usually ends up over budget, and I think going towards a cloud migration also happens like this. But it's the difference is that you can be agile. You can stop without having too much costs. If you decide that you are on a wrong track, you can cancel that track and you can restart again. And when you are doing a migration, there are three phases. Basically, it's the assess phase. There are three phases that I recommend. You can approach it whatever you like, but it's like the assess. You want to look at your footprint. Then is the mobilize phase, where you're gonna want to do POCs. You're gonna want to test your hypothesis and see if it goes. And then it's the actual migration. So I won't go into launching a large-scale migration at once. I would go through those phases. All right, so how can you do the budget? What do you need to do in order to have proper budgeting? So first of all is to look at the costs. Understand your existing costs, like current expenditures, data center costs, energy cost, whatever costs. Then have a cost prediction model. Think of, okay, I'm running this in my own data center and it costs me X. How much would it cost me to run it on AWS or on GCP or on Azure? Do like a ballpark. Then do a return of investment analysis. Really think deep if it makes sense, because sometimes you can go with the hype of doing the cloud migration, it doesn't make sense for you. So you have to look at this. You have to look at not just one-on-one, because usually 1 gigabyte of RAM on premise, it's cheaper than 1 gigabyte of RAM on premise in the cloud. So if you go on this track, definitely you won't have any positive ROI. But if you go on track, or if you look at the time to market, if you look at the cost of opportunity of not having your products fast in front of your customers, or moving yourself as an organization fast, then the calculation might be different. And the fun fact, that's a study from IDC saying that 77%, I think, of CIOs, this was last year, 2022, don't know what are the cost of their application running in the data center. So we're spending 5 million a year. What are you spending on? Well, SAP. Who knows? So definitely, it's a very good practice. All right. Then look at the financial migrations, because those will have a huge impact on the migration costs. So look at the discounts, because sometimes you have infrastructure that, like on-premise infrastructure, that you just invested in, and it doesn't make sense to throw it away. But you want to migrate to the cloud. You can double your cost, or you can look at some discounts, infrastructure discounts for 1 or 2 or 3 years, negotiate with the cloud provider, and then you'll have a total cost of migration lower. So this is super important. Look at free credits, because it will help you experiment faster. You won't have to get into budget approvals or whatever. As a large organization, you can do your experiments faster. And look at professional services, as mentioned. A ballpark is that you can get up to 80% discount on your cloud spending for the first 3 years. That's all the major providers, cloud providers give. You can have PLC credits, which are tied to your estimated consumption, so we cannot put a number on that. And you can have around up to $400,000, euros, whatever, in professional services. So if it's the cloud providers are willing to pay for a partner or whatever to pay you in credits or in actual cash by discounting your invoice to migrate as fast and as easy. All right, so after you have a plan with your budget and you understand exactly how what will be your costs, it's super important to define some success metrics. First of all, align early. Align early, not just with the technical stakeholders, but also with the business stakeholders, because at the end of the day, business outcomes matters. And you need to make sure you want to be business-centric. You want to have those metrics that really have an impact on your business. Doing a migration for the sake of doing a migration, it will become expensive. Also make sure there's stakeholder transparency, so you make it visible in terms of costs and decisions and reasons to all stakeholders, regardless if they are only technical or business stakeholders. And also try to think it as agile as possible and have accountability on the failures, because doing a cloud migration is very difficult and you fail a lot, and you fail with by generating costs, regardless of if there are infrastructure costs or downtime costs or cost of lack of opportunity. So you need to make sure, because to keep everyone in the loop, being transparent, so you can have your agility and have also accountability on the migration. And then you get back to the Excel sheet, and basically you put your key performance metrics, you count them, and this is something that companies were speaking about like 5-10 years ago, when like the DevOps movement started, like 15 years ago. They were speaking about put some metrics on infrastructure, or the impact on infrastructure, put some metrics on the impact on infrastructure. You can have metrics like virtual machine managed by an administrator, which is a straightforward metric, but you can have like mean time to recovery, or you can have time to market. Time to market, it's not something that you can rely. It's something that it's being influenced by infrastructure, but not something that people usually were counting. And you can look at where we are, what we expect, and what are the top performers doing. And then you can have like an estimate. Doesn't matter if you nail the numbers. It's not important nailing the numbers, but it's important to have like a guide to see where you are compared to that guide. If you are way above, then you failed in, you are in a good position, but you failed to put a proper number, and you adjust. But it doesn't matter so much. All right, so after you have those numbers, then you want to Basically, you want to develop your migration strategy. And is the 7R framework. I think it started from, I don't know, IDC or like a large consultant created the 6R framework, and then AWS updated it to the 7R framework. But it has become a standard in migrating. And the 7R framework comes from rehosting, which is like quickly lift and shift. Take a VM from the on-prem and put it in the cloud. It's re-platform, which is a bit of different approach. If you decide to move from one cloud environment to another cloud environment, migrate from, I don't know, VMs to Kubernetes or from Kubernetes to serverless. It's refactor, which is application refactorization, going cloud native. It's relocate, that can be moving to another data center or from one cloud provider to another. Then it's repurchase. Basically, you stop using, I don't know, SAP on your own infrastructure and you go to SAP SaaS. That's a repurchase. Or you retire, you decide that some of like 80% of your services you are not using them, you're just burning the gas, so you decide to retire them, or you retain them. You have Spark instances and you want to keep them, you cannot migrate them to the cloud, you decide to keep your own data center. So using that 7 framework and what I told you earlier, basically you look at your current IT snapshot. You have like databases, applications, whatever. Then you put them, you organize them in like business applications, non-business application, internal application, whatever, databases. You put them in some categories. And then you apply that migration strategy for all of them. And you look, should I refactor them? Should I replatform them? Should I repurchase them? You look at all those 7 R's. And to retire, it's the easiest. To refactor, it's the most complicated. So there are a lot of, we heard, and I'm going to speak a bit later about the analysis paralysis in large organizations, when they say, should we refactor and then migrate, but we don't have the tools to refactor. So what can we do? They're going into an infinite loop. So I think I need a, yeah, my clicker stop running. Okay, it's a different presentation. That's a bit of magic. Yeah. Yes, it's working. Cool. So most of the time technology beats us. We're discussing about migrating to the cloud. We're discussing about, and we have like a PDF not working. But we need generative AI. Generative AI is the key. All right. So basically, having this plan, looking at your existing infrastructure, organizing them into silos, and then deciding the strategy, you're going to have a plan. And if that screen would have been at a better resolution, you could have read what's written there. But there are paths. Should I do it manually? Should I automate? It's for every approach of the 7 R's. There are some methods of doing it, and you have the method of doing it manually. You have the method of automating it. You have a lot of things. Should I go into managed services? Should I go into managed service? So you put this, and then you start having a clear migration plan. And then doing the migration, you should come up back to the assess phase. Because, okay, I understood this cloud has the services that are good for me, and I want to migrate for it. It makes sense from a financial perspective. I have tons of discounts, so it's almost migrating for free. Then you'll have to make sure you are able to actually migrate the applications, and you do that in a proper way. And then you go again to assessment. You look at your application, you look at the technical stack, then you do a proof of concept. You don't just live migrate it. You look at Um, Creating a POC there, copying the database, copying the application server, and see if it works, see if it scales, see if it the type of CPUs provide uh, the same resources as you had previously. And then you do like data and application migration. Don't stress too much about optimization. Um, Actually, from Freshfruit, they over-provision the infrastructure when they launch in order to make sure it will cope with the scale. And it was like 5% usage based on how much they over-provision. But they reduced the infrastructure, and after a couple of months, they started to look at optimizing cost. And most of the time, optimizing cost means committing to a consumption. But you cannot commit to a consumption if you don't have a good understanding. And this is what a very good cloud provider this is what cloud providers provide very well. Provide like on-demand capacity so you can adjust. So after you do the migration, everything gets live. Then you look at optimization, you look at governance, and you look at everything. And before cutting me, as I told you about the analysis paralysis, because we see a lot of businesses looking to modernize and find themselves don't know how to start. And they have questions like, can we migrate our legacy applications to the cloud or to Kubernetes? Should we break down? Should we modernize? Where do we need to get started? What do we need to do in order to get started with microservices and whatever? I think it's an automatic failover system. So based on my experience working with a lot of customers, the way to modernize is to first migrate to Kubernetes on a lift and shift approach. I think it fits not all the cases, but most of the cases, because it's not something that changes the underlying infrastructure. It's just a layer of abstractization that you can run mostly any application on any environment. And basically, lift and shift, it's a process of migrating the workload from on-premise to the cloud with little or no modification. And you put it, lift and shift on Kubernetes, you put it basically on a platform that allows you to have the primitives to modernize later. So if you have any question, otherwise, thank you so much.
Let's see if we have data enthusiasts.
Cloud enthusiasts.
Cloud enthusiasts. Okay, so we have Marian.
Yeah, quick question. Can Alibaba be considered a hyperscaler?
I think they just closed their...
Tencent then?
Well, I don't have a very good understanding of them. I think yes and no. Yes, that I know they have a lot of services, but no, they don't have they don't have data centers running all across the world. So Tencent doesn't have like a region in Frankfurt, in Milan, in whatever. So I think it's at the borderline. But also, if you look at, I mean, how many large organizations would trust Tencent for their medical data? I think also it's a political question. I think it's also a political question. So it's China and the rest of the world.
I just want to touch the point that answers are not that simple as it seems, or as you sometimes attempted to present. At least from this point of view, even the big hyperscalers don't have such a strong position in China themselves. And if you want to touch this market, what are your choices?
That's a very good question. And AWS, I think, has a very good presence in China. They have a region in China. I think it's called I think Radu from AWS is there. And okay, they have 2 regions. And all Asia is covered, so I think they have, out of all the hyperscaler, they have the biggest presence in Asia, not sure particularly on China. And to be honest with you, it's pretty difficult for me to give you an answer because I don't have any projects in China, so I'm not very familiar with that market.
And I have another question. What prevents you to manage Kafka in Google Cloud, for instance, or Azure?
It doesn't prevent you to run it. It's when you are saying managed service, it should be managed by the cloud provider. So if Google Cloud provides you managed Kafka,
sorry, you can run Kafka managed by Confluent, which are the creator of Kafka.
Well, that's a different approach. Of course, you can run it on your own premise. You can manage it yourself.
No, but I think that the point here is that I don't know why it's better Kafka managed by AWS than Kafka managed by Confluent. I don't understand exactly why.
Well, I think those decisions are very opinionated. You have to look at the costs. Not sure what are the costs of running, but I know that I've been working with the Elasticsearch team to manage Elasticsearch cluster on AWS, and also AWS has Elastic Managed
Yes,
Service.
I know.
And at the end of the day, working with the Elasticsearch team was 3 times more expensive, but it got us out of some situations. If you ask me now, could we have done it with the professional services from AWS or AWS support team? I don't know for sure, because we didn't reach out to them. So I think those decisions are pretty opinionated. It
Yes.
can be an option or it cannot be an option.
I agree with that.
Exactly. You know, but it's
Thank
good. At the end of the day, a hyperscaler offers you options. You know, whether you want to use it or not use it, it's up to you. But it's better to have the option of running OpenSearch or Kafka Manage or whatever to consume it easy when you want to launch something, rather than go into a purchase with.
I totally agree with this, and I also agree with the answer that is an opinion.
Exactly.
I have no problem with that. One small quick note that even if it's not a hyperscaler, and even if I don't work for DigitalOcean, DigitalOcean is having Kafka managed. So.
They started, they have managed Kubernetes, they have managed Kafka, they have managed databases, they started going in this territory. So I think on the long run, it won't be only AWS and GCP winning. Also, there's Oracle Cloud, they have a lot of managed services, but do they fit? Are they on top of that? I think also you can do a comparison between those 3 cloud providers, and you can look at the maturity. AWS, for example, has 7 years, has the advantage of being early with 7 years than the rest of the competition. So they had the time to mature themselves. They had the time to get the market. Will they be caught? I don't know. But again, you need to look at options and then decide using those kind of thought models and frameworks. You need to decide whether one or the other is a good option for you. I think DigitalOcean and on-premise could be very good options. And we have customers running on-premise for some use cases, not as a hyperscaler. I think running on-premise for having your own data center or having your own servers could be cheaper and
for some cases. Yeah.
For some cases, of course, and for some digital cases, I mean, for Emagi, as an example, Emagi is running their own data centers. I don't know why, but they managed to do that, and they can go through Black Friday without having any issues.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Can I ask you, let's get out of these technical discussions. Can we get 9 years of cloud services with 80% discount by moving around?
Yes, it's called cloud hopping, and not 80%, because at the enterprise level you are getting those kind of discounts, but it's something very often seen in the startup space. So they are getting 100K from AWS, then they are going to GCP. It's not nice, but it's happening. So yes, it's a tip. If you are a startup, you can get 3 or 4 years.
Can I ask you, you mentioned, and I also read in international press about companies moving out from the cloud. Yes. So I'm curious if you see things like this happening in Romania or in the region.
Well, Romania hasn't been in the cloud yet, so it takes, they need to first go to the cloud.
Without the government, okay.
Exactly, they need to first go to the cloud and then decide to move back.
Okay, so thank you so much for sharing this with us. It was a very good presentation, and thank you everyone for staying the whole day